how do you take your modern news web part to another level in order to solve common news requirements within the organization? So as you can see here within the homepage, I have news pulling from several different sections, and that's common because the modern news web part is actually extremely powerful out of the box, and usually with little to no or very few configuration options, you can actually achieve a lot. But one of the main things that the modern news web part provides is a filtering capability. So, say for example, if you get down to this section here where we're featured news, I want to pull in news from other sources. So maybe all of the sites that are associated with this hub, I want to pull those in, and that's pretty fair, but I don't want everything. I only want the news that are flagged on those respective sites as featured. So here I'm going to use my managed property. And then I created a managed property called is feature, a nice user-friendly name. And then here, what the condition I want to set is where it's equal to true. And once I do that, what it's going to do, if you look at the results here in this web part, what it's doing is that, let me just expand it so you can all can see it, is pulling from Model Y, Model 3, and then only the ones that are actually flagged as true. Okay, so the question is, how did you do this? How did I get the is featured, nice, friendly looking name to pop up here? Now let's kind of walk through that, and that's going to be the core of this video, because once you activate managed properties and once you really understand managed property, you have a really nice strategy to leverage them across the site. You can do some very, very powerful things within modern SharePoint using the news web part. So in order to do that managed property, the first thing you have to do is that you're going to have access to the SharePoint admin portal. You want to pop over here to the SharePoint admin portal, and under more features here, just go to search. And what we're going to do, we're going to actually create a managed property. And the key is you want to create the managed property at the SharePoint admin level. You have the option to create managed properties at the site collection level and even at the web level in some scenarios. But for it to be available in that drop down that we just saw in the modern web part, it has to be at this level. Now, when you do that, it's going to be very simple. Here, let's just go walk through it. Let's just call it is featured news, because I already have one called is featured. So let me just call it is featured news. It's a text type result, even though it does return a yes no column. Let's just use text for now. I want to here's the other key thing. It has to be searchable. I'm not 100% about queryable or retrievable, but I check those just in case. If I build something custom, I can then filter it by or show that value. So you might want to have that set up. And then here I have it selected for safe for anonymous. I don't think we would ever hit this. So actually, let's uncheck it, because I think the other ones are doing it without it. We'll never hit anonymous access, right? In Office 365, every user is authenticated, even our guest users. Okay, so then we have, let's go all the way down here to where map to manage crawl properties. So here I'm going to add mapping. And then what this is going to do, this is going to find the crawl property that's associated with the site column that I created, right? So let's just pause here for a little bit, because I want to harp on this just for a quick second, because I think managed properties, crawl properties, site columns, and then term store, managed metadata all becomes kind of blurred together, right? So when we talk about managed properties and crawl properties, what we saw was a crawl property. Come on, play nice. Terminus active panel. All right, here we go. What we saw in the dropdown is a managed property, right? And what a managed property does, it allows you to kind of put a user-friendly face and some other properties and characteristics on what comes out of the index. And in the index, you're going to have all these crawl properties, right? And these crawl properties are going to represent site columns that you put on your list and libraries. So these are, once they get indexed, They're going to generate these crawl properties, which are these guys here. And then you're going to come in the SharePoint admin and define a managed property and give it certain attributes. And the attributes we have would make it queryable, make it searchable, make it refinable. And then what we're doing is going to say, okay, this managed property represents these crawl properties. And there's some gotchas, there's some rules when dealing with crawl properties, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. So here I'm going to search on is featured because this is the name that I have for my site column, and this is going to take a little bit here. And this is the guy that we want, right? So once I click here, and notice that I'm selecting the OWS. I only, in my scenario, because that is featured, site column is a yes no column. It only has one type of crawl property, but when you're dealing with term store or managed metadata site column types, you're going to have different types of crawl properties represented. It's usually safe to always select the one that has the OWS prefix or OWS within the name of the crawl property. All right, so that's just one of those gotchas that you kind of run into when you're selecting crawl properties. So once I map that over, that's going to be here. I go ahead and hit OK, and then I wait, right? So that usually in Office 365, I would say once you create these, usually takes about 10 to 20 minutes for this thing to be available. The other thing to watch out for is that when you're dealing with those crawl properties, right? If you just created a site column and you're not using it, or you don't have values in that site column because you don't have a list item created or a document created with that site column, what's going to happen is that crawl property is not going to be there, right? So that's another thing that you have to keep in mind, is that when you're looking at these site columns and when you associate these site columns, so let me just go here to site settings from that site pages. And here I don't have the is featured here. So let me go ahead and create it. And I'm going to create it the wrong way, the way that I recommend not to do this, right? And then I'm going to show you the correct way on best practices on how you should be using this, leveraging the content type hub. So here I'm going to do is featured, and I'm going to select yes. The default value is going to be no, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, because if I look at all my other sites, right, I know I feel like I'm bouncing all over the place, but I kind of wanted to bring this all together and show you how this is working. So here I'm popping over into my Model 3 site. I'm going to the gear icon, site contents, down here to site pages, and looking at the schema for the site pages library. So this is where all of our articles are stored. So here I have the is feature, and there's a yes or no type site column. Now, and I have to, if I want any other my sites that appear here on the home page, if I want any of these sites to have that is featured, I have to go to each one of these sites in their respective site pages library in the site settings, and then create that is featured site column. I have to be careful to spell it the correct way, and I have to make sure I select the same type each and every time. I can't mix and match, in one instance have it a single line text, and another instance have it a choice, and another instance have it a yes, no. They have to be in sync. And there's an easier way, there's a best practice way to guarantee that, and that's with the content type hub. And I'll show you that here in a second. So here, back to my which site I'm in now. So back to my main home page that's on the site column. I'm sorry, that's my main home page, and here the site pages library. If I go in here to site pages, now I have this is featured column available to me, and I can start tagging them. Now, here's another gotcha that you have to watch out for. When your users start using this, your content managers start using this, you want to make sure they're tagging the article from the front door or the front end or the body of the article, right? You do not want to tag these articles in the site pages. And the reason for that is that when I tag this and I hit update, this seems to send a signal to search that says, hey, something has changed. Go ahead and re-index this article. And you will see that it probably would take 5 to 10 minutes for that change to represent, especially when we're dealing with flagging this in this search to pop up. So it's going to take about 5 or 10 minutes for that to pop up. Now, which is fine, it's just a delay because we're dealing with Office 365 and we're dealing with search in general. You can expect delays to be to be in the middle of what you're trying to get done. So now that I have this is queued up, I don't have to go back in SharePoint Admin Center and reestablish the managed property and crawl property, because I was very careful to use the exact same site column name. So what the index is going to do is going to say, oh, this site column name is the same. I already have a crawl property, so it's just going to dump that data into that same crawl property, and that managed property is going to pick that up. So I don't have to worry about that. So here in a second, we should see that new article pop up. If I keep hitting refresh, I should see that. Let's just give it a little bit more time, but that should pop up here. Okay, so now let's talk about the content type hub, which is the best practice on associating site columns to libraries and lists, especially if it's the same site column that represent a same set of data. So here we go. If we go to the gear icon, go into site information, and then view all site settings. Right here under the site collection section, there's a section here called content type publishing. If you click on content type publishing, it's going to give you a couple things here, a couple of key pieces of information here. One is going to show you the content type. I've already set this up for the Tesla base that's actually been synced from the content type hub. And it's also going to give you a link to the content type hub. So if I right click this and pop this in a new tab, your content type hub, I'm not going to go too deep on what the hub is merely, in short, is just a site collection that you use to manage content types and site columns. And this is a key, and most Office 365 tenants will only have one instance of these. And it's key because all of the content types created here, when you go to your individual site column, site collections. And then if I go back into, come on, gear icon, where are you? Here we go. If I go back into site information and view all site settings here and look at the site columns here, most of these are coming from the content type hub, and they're going to be available to me in any site collection that I provision in the tenant. That's the power. Or else you're replicating copies of this data. Sometimes it gets confusing on, did you make a change here, but it may not be here. And then you look at search and trying to research problems that you're having with search, or things are not showing up the way that you expected. It's because you have all these copies that represent the same type of data. The content type hub is going to take all of the guesswork out. It's going to centralize it. And then you have one single spot to manage this content. Now, here's the rub. The rub is, the content type hub only pushes down content types and the site columns associated with those content types. So I'm actually faking it in a sense, because I don't plan to ever use this Tesla based content type. This is really just a vehicle to get my site columns from the content type hub and make those available for each and every site collection. So let's just jump into this. So if I jump into this Tesla base, I actually has a is featured item. Note the difference in the name. And I purposely did this because I actually started creating is featured as copies across all the site collections. And then I realized, like, wow, this can get dirty real quick. And all it takes is for me to do a is space feature, and all of a sudden I have a different content crawl property that represent this site column. So I wanted these to be consistent across all my site collections. So in the content type hub is where I would do it. So not to be confused with the copies that are out there, I just created this is featured item, right? So now what we can do, like, say, for example, we want to create a site column to represent all of the models within Tesla. So what I would do here, I would just go ahead and say, add a new site column, right? And then let's just call these Tesla models. And if you're like me, when I first create this name, I'm gonna create it without a space, because I know when we get into like SPFX or creating extensions for custom web parts, and we have to call this with a REST API, we don't want spaces in there and have to deal with that. So I'm not going to throw a space in there when I first create it, and then I'm gonna touch this site column again with a display name to make it nice and clean. So here I'm gonna make this a choice column. You can argue that this probably is best for a term store or a term set. But here, for our purposes, we're going to do that. And I'm also, any site column that I create, I'm going to drop that into my Tesla group so it's easy for me to filter on. Any content type that I create, again, I'm going to have a Tesla group for that content type, and I'm going to throw those there. So here, let's just do all of our models. So let's just do model S. Then we're going to do model 3. Then we're going to do model X. Let's capitalize S. And then we can do Roadster. Then we can do the Cybertruck. That's what we have for now, okay? And then as we deploy new models, we would just come up here to the content type hub, add the new model as a choice, and then hit republish, and then everything would go. So we don't want a default value. We want to, and we can force them to select one, right? So we can make this require, oh, it seems like you can't do this here. So once they get down to the site collection or the list, you can force that to be required when they're using it, no default value, and then you hit OK. All right. So now what it's going to do, I have these Tesla models here. Let me touch it one more time. It's a two-step process. So now I have a nice display value for Tesla models. My internal name is not going to have a space, but my display name, I do want a space for readability. Okay. So that's going to all lined up, and that's ready to rock and roll. So now I've made a change to this content type. I have to tell the hub that I'm ready to push this out. So here I have this republish option. I just go ahead and push that out and the republish, and then you wait for like 60 minutes. And that's the rub we're dealing with. Search and the content type hub is the lag and the wait time that you have to, you're kind of like in this holding pattern until things are available. So let's go ahead and pop back over to our portal. And now let's just see how all of this is going to come together. So now if I go to this gear icon, go to site contents, and then site pages, and then site settings. And now what's going to happen is that I can, from here, say add from existing site columns, and then select from the group here. And again, this is my site column group, not my content type group. And that's why I'm just using that content type as a vehicle to push all my site columns down. And now I can, it opens it up to reusability of these site columns as well, right? So I have is feature item on purpose, right? Because here, once I bring it in and use it here on the screen in the view, you can change these display names, right? So I can say is featured news, and maybe if I wanted to use this on my events list, I can change it to is featured event, or if it's on a document, or is featured policy, or is featured deck, or whatever the case may be. So the reusability is there. So in the content type hub, give it a generic name with the understanding that once you use it in the actual list and library, you can change that to a display name that works within the context of it's being used, right? So here, and changing the display name has zero effect on the crawl property, right? That's the other thing to be aware of. So, okay, so now I have this here, and now I want to click on some of these articles. And then I go to page details, go into edit mode, page details. And then here you're going to have, I should have two of these now, page details. All right. So I have two of these now. And so eventually I will get rid of this one because I don't need it. And then I will reestablish my structure and my strategy to use is featured news. And now I just turn this on, and now I'm tagging this content. Now, with that being tagged, hopefully when the search executes again and starts to reindex, it's going to pick up that value and create a crawl property, because I think that's the first time I use that particular site column that's coming from the hub. So if I go to the gear icon, you can kind of force this a little bit, hit site information, view all site settings. Seems like I'm in here a lot. I would just bookmark it, but it's good to kind of click through some of the stuff. Actually, it's not good at all. All right, so here I can go here, and then I can go to, what is it, search. This is search and offline availability. But note that what I'm looking for is the reindex option for this web, which is the root web within the site collection and not the site collection. So that's why I'm in this group of options here that's under search, which pertains to the root web, whereas these options pertain to the site collection as a whole. So here at the root web, I can go to search and offline availability, hit reindex the site, and it's going to say, hey, this is going to slow things down. You sure you want to do this? Hit yep. And you want to use that sparingly, especially if your tenant is loaded with a ton of content, a ton of data. You're just, you can bog it down. I don't know if you would see it as as a user or a tenant within this infrastructure, right? But best believe it does have an impact on some CPU and RAM somewhere in the cloud, whatever server that they got hosting this stuff. All right, so okay, so now we force re-index that. We may get lucky, we may not get lucky. Let's see. Now I pop back over here into the SharePoint admin portal, go over here to search, and then go to manage search schema. Again, at the admin level, this is the only place you can go to make these things available to those modern web parts in that drop down that we saw. So now that we're here, let's go. So now I have a managed property. So I can search on my is featured. Now, what I'm looking for. So here is going to bring up all my managed properties, and I'm not going to have a managed property for is featured item, right? I may. So let me be clear here, because what happens is that the crawl, when it indexes and finds a crawl property, it will automatically create a managed property for you. But it's not, that managed property that gets created for you is actually pretty ugly. Let me see if I can find one that gets created for you. They actually have these auto created managed properties. And I think they start with, I think they're going to have OWS within the name. Let me see, is featured. But some of the, I think like something like this. These are going to be created for you, and they're not going to have the right attributes that you need them to have. And they're going to be ugly, right? So, we want, because our content managers are going to be selecting these from that drop down within the web part property of the modern web part. And we want those to be user-friendly names and more predictable names, right? Especially if they have to search for them. So, and that's why I always create my own managed properties in this scenario. All right, so here I'm going to go ahead and do is featured again. And I'm going to show you something that we can do. And this is the power of managed properties and their relationship with crawl properties. Wow, this is taking a while. Am I being penalized because I re-indexed that site? Is that why this is taking forever? All right. Here's our guy. That's an example. That's a prime example of a system created managed property, and it's is featured, but then it has all this old other stuff at the end of it. It brought it in as a Boolean value, which makes things a little bit tricky when you start to select the condition check, right? So here I want to go ahead and hit this is featured. I want to reuse this guy. I don't know. I'm confused now. So let's reuse this guy. I saw the is featured news. I think that probably would be a better one to select. But anyway, I want to reuse this guy. Again, this is pointing to the site column that I created at the library level. And I want to use the site column that I created at the content type hub level. So in order to do that, let me just do the add mapping. This is going to go ahead and bring this in for me. And things are starting to get real slow. We're dealing with search. Things are slow. It's a waiting period, and usually those are the issues that you run into because you're trying to go after something too early. Wow, this is slow. Okay. Oh no, it was just heading towards the top. Okay, so here I just type in is feature, and this is going to be a wildcard match. Okay, so everything. So my is feature item site column should pop up here shortly. All right, here we go. All right, so here's my, you see the Boolean, and then you have this guy. And this is what I was saying, making sure that you select the correct crawl property type. I always go with the clean one that has OWS as the prefix. Usually that's going to get me closer to what I'm looking for. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually map 2 crawl properties to this one managed property. And then what it's going to say, and usually these are hacks, right? These are the ones that, oh man, I got a site column with this name. Maybe I called it is featured without the D, or maybe it was is space featured. And, and those crawl properties are going to represent that naming, right? Or the misnaming. So here I'm at map both of these to the same, these two crawl properties to that one managed property. And anytime I use that managed property, it's actually going to, um, if either column is used, it's actually going to make a hit. All right. So that's while that's saving and it's taking forever. Let's see if I have, this is the tab that I have from my home page. And I think what we were doing, we were waiting for my Tesla Model X to show up. I'm sorry, this Tesla demo article to show up. And so far, still not here. Control F5. Still not here. Why isn't it here? Okay, so let's do this. Let's go and see, make sure we're still tagged. And so let me go to site contents and then go to the pages library. And what I love to do, I love to create a view, right, of my featured articles. So what I can do, I can take this current view. Actually, I don't like the grouping format. So I like the flat view. So let me hit all pages and then bring in my is featured. Let's see. I had to bring both of these in now because now I'm making things even more confusing. So you see how I have this mismatch. So let me just filter on. Let's take the new one. So let's filter on this where these are yes, right? And then create a new view with those. So is featured. And then save this all. So now I can easily, bounce between all my pages and the ones that are featured. And that just makes things a lot easier. So I'm actually looking for this sample. This is sample. This is a sample to pop up in this area here, right? Because this is looking for all my feature items. Let me just make sure this site is actually selected within the list. So let me go back into edit mode, double check my configuration here. Yep, all sites in the hub. So it should be selected. The is featured managed property, right, is equal to true. And here's the confusing part. You see where it says is equal to true, right? But then if you look at the values in the actual site pages library, or even here when you turn that on, it actually has the value in there as yes or no. Another tricky part, right? And it's just little nuances, things like this, especially when you're dealing with a yes no type column. Your choice drop downs and your term stores a little bit different too, like term sets. When you manage metadata, when you manage metadata versus manage property are two different things. The names are very similar, but they represent two different things. Manage metadata is our site columns tied to term sets that represent terms within the term store. Managed properties are those dealing with search, right? The managed properties that map to crawl properties that make things visible or revealable in search in general. All right. So I think this is it. I mean, we can sit here and wait, but I think we'd just be spinning our wheels here. I'm hoping there's not an issue. Usually, what happened, like if you fat finger something, or maybe you really are just waiting on search, but that's when troubleshooting really becomes important. Let me show you this one troubleshooting trick. These are called KQLs, where you can take a managed property name, right, and then use a colon and then put in the value that you're expecting and execute the search. And this is going to say, okay, within this hub, because that search executes across all the sites in the hub, it's going to say, okay, within this hub, these are the items that you can expect that have already been indexed. And this is search revealing that, for this managed property and this specified value, these are the ones that are tagged as such. And I can look at these URLs. So that's from the Model 3 site. That's from Model 3. Oh, D1, we need your help. Oh, yeah. So this is, why is this not showing up? So it's showing me that I should have 5, right? And then if you open this up to with the organization level, you saw how I clicked on that. And now it's going to search for this managed property across all the site collections within Office 365. Again, that's why having these site columns at the content type hub level makes all the sense in the world. It gives you a lot more flexibility, a lot more capability, And again, not just on news, right? You can drop that site column anywhere. You can drop that site column on a events list, a task list, any other custom list that you may create, and really expand it out and reuse that managed property mapping, especially because you have to use those managed properties or create those managed properties at the SharePoint admin level. Usually everyone's not going to have access to that, and it becomes a ticket request and all this other stuff from a business perspective, and it becomes a waiting game. It takes you that much longer to get things done. All right, so I don't know, let me see, is this thing finally showing up? No, it's not. Maybe I'm hitting my max, maybe. So let's see. What if I change the layout? What if I change the layout to Hub News? And yeah, here we go. There's all 5. Oh, okay. So it wasn't as recent as the ones that sit on top of it. But here you can see it's last in the list, right? Which is confusing because in the search results, it looked like it's not sorting by a published date, maybe by relevant. So this is like a random, I wouldn't say random, maybe it's popularity. Maybe it's popularity. Whereas our web part is going to sort them by published date, regardless if it's popular or not. So it's the date that was published. So here in this view, I can see that the one I was expecting to show up got buried because in this view, I only show the top 4, where in Hub News, I have access to display more than 4. So it was there all along. It was just hidden because of the layout selected. Okay, so that's it for this video. Again, that's how you can kind of unleash the superpowers within your Modern News web parts. It's definitely some hoops to jump through, but if you plan it right and if you give yourself enough time to get things done, it's actually it's very powerful and very sweet to work with. All right, that's it for this video. Let me know if there's any questions or comments. I'll be looking forward to interacting with you in the comments section. Take care.